Godzilla, Alpha of Earth, King of the Monsters, last of his kind, or at least, so he thought. For as explored in Part 1, Godzilla was not in fact the last Titanus Gojira, a new member of his species having been discovered within Mothra's domain. Which leads me to ask, how will Godzilla Jr. continue to grow and evolve under the guidance of Kong? Will his relationship with Godzilla ever improve? Well, all of that and so much more will be explored as I ask for a second time, what if Godzilla Jr. existed within the Monsterverse? Before I dive into this scenario, I do want to give a special shout out to Alpha Titan YouTube member 23 Travs for being the one that came up with this idea. Anyway, that does lead to the question of where exactly are we in this timeline? Well, Mechagodzilla's destroyed, Kamazotz is ash, Kong's been fostering Godzilla Jr. all while his dad continues to hang out at the corner store, buying milk and cigarettes. Jokes aside, and to be fair to the King of the Monsters, Godzilla's been ensuring balance across the globe, placing faith in the young reptile to carve his own path. However, Jr. doesn't see his abandonment in this light. The young Saurian feels inadequate, the insatiable drive to become stronger leading him to become Kong's protege, a role that continues in the years after Godzilla vs. Kong. So what have the pair been up to in that time? Mostly exploring the Hollow Earth. Godzilla may have nullified the monstrous storm over Skull Island, but that act of goodwill came too late for the Iwi, who did not survive Kamazotz's ascension. Most were still swept away, leaving Gia as the sole survivor. Thus, there is nothing keeping Kong attached to Skull Island. His drive to find others like himself would place him underground, specifically in the Hollow Earth, which means Junior would also be in the Hollow Earth in the coming years. One bright side, at least compared to the original timeline, is this closeness between Atomic Reptile and Great Ape means Kong never sinks to the same depths of depression we saw in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire. Sure, the loneliness and disappointment are constants, but then again, so is Godzilla Jr., and he makes all the difference here. Though on that note, I would be mistaken if I didn't mention the human cast monitoring Kong and Junior's escapades within the Hollow Earth. Dr. Eileen Andrews may be the world's foremost expert on Kong, but for Junior, there is no one more knowledgeable on the creature than Madison Russell. Mark's doctorate and Monarch's official designation may make him the foremost expert on the Titanus Gojira species on paper, but credentials don't account for everything. See, Madison's connection with Junior runs deeper than any academic title, and with her own Orca device, refined over the decades since she originally met Junior, it means she doesn't need a psychic connection like Gia has to Kong to communicate with her friend. When outside of college and within the Hollow Earth, no human understands Rahab like she does. Rahab being Madison's own name for the reptile, meaning Prince of the Primordial Abyss. A fitting title considering Junior's current whereabouts. So Kong and Junior's emotional turmoil aside, the pair are in a relatively positive spot after the events of Godzilla vs. Kong, which is not something I can say for Apex. Walter Simmons, Ren Serizawa, and Maya Simmons may have lived in this timeline, but that just means they get to suffer through the aftermath of Mechagodzilla's destruction. Dozens, hundreds, perhaps thousands of wrongful death lawsuits spring into existence overnight. I mean, once Godzilla destroyed a facility or two, it'd be quite hard for Walter or really any high-ranking member of Apex to claim ignorance. They weren't just tempting fate by building Mechagodzilla. They were prodding the wrath of a living god. Apex's stock craters overnight. Monarch severs all ties with the organization. Walter's dream of usurping Godzilla, of killing a living god, seemingly has led Apex to the brink of death. But to ensure he doesn't have to bury his company, Walter employs some desperate measures to keep his legacy alive. What kind of desperate measures, you might be asking? Well, offloading company assets to like-minded corporations or countries, One such buyer is RM Construction, or more specifically, its CEO, Raymond Martin. Raymond is no stranger to loss at the hands of the Titans. In fact, he's intimately familiar with such a concept. The Muto attack of 2014 took his parents, wife, and his son from him. It is that grief that drove him in Godzilla x Kong the Hunted to construct the Titan Hunter mech, a machine built not for profit or power, but vengeance against all Titans. So in exchange for some much needed liquidity, RM Construction receives the engineering blueprints of Mechagodzilla, and most importantly, the ability to replicate Hollow Earth energy. Now, just to stress, Raymond can't build a Mechagodzilla on his own due to a lack of funding and resources, but with access to the schematics and energy systems that made Mechagodzilla the most dangerous machine ever constructed, he has everything he needs to evolve his own Titan Hunter design. Upgrades like a Hollow Earth energy reactor instead of the original nuclear core, and the ability to conduct energy through the robot's physical blows, just like Mechagodzilla. The upgrades don't come without a cost though, and the cost is time. Because even with Apex's support, the new Titan Hunter wouldn't be ready any faster than the original. Quite the opposite actually, as more time is needed to implement these upgrades. Why does this timing matter? Well, Raymond's sights would not only fall on Kong, but Junior. Each are worthy prizes in his own mind. And if the Titan Hunter was ready earlier in the timeline, then as Kong ventures to the surface during the events of Kong's Survivor Instinct, it'd be the perfect time for Raymond to hunt the Prince of the Monsters. Alas, such a tale is not to be, which means Rahab is free to make his own way to the surface and fight alongside Kong against Abaddon and Tiamat. Well, at least until Lahamu is free. On a side note, once the whole conflict Alan Jonah instigated finally concludes, Madison should be able to get her hands on the Orca Sigma, allowing her to upgrade her own device with the ability to summon and influence a greater variety of Titans if she so desired. But circling back to Raymond and his vendetta, when is his prize machine finally complete? Well, given the delays, let's say the Titan Hunter mech is finally ready to launch a little over 3 years after Mechagodzilla's death. Or to be specific, the exact day a breach opens within the Hollow Earth, unlocking the sealed chamber which lay below. Like in Godzilla x Kong: The New Empire, Gia and Godzilla each sense the disturbance, or at least the Hollow Earth Iwi's warnings. Yet unlike the original, Godzilla doesn't awaken in Rome because, well, he has no reason to be there. Because Raymond's Titan Hunter mech is using Hollow Earth energy instead of nuclear power, that means Raymond doesn't need to leave nuclear devices across the planet. Nuclear devices which attracted Scylla's attention. Now ultimately these devices were meant to distract Godzilla, and Scylla's involvement definitely did that. But because of this, it would also mean that Scylla doesn't pick a fight with the King of the Monsters in Rome. A bit ironic if you think about it. In making his mech more lethal, Raymond inadvertently spares the very kind of creature he set out to destroy. Anyway, Godzilla simply awakens under the ocean and begins his journey to evolve to face the coming threat. Gia suffers the same visions at school as in the original timeline, sending Eileen into the same spiral of concern, but this time it's Madison Russell who comes in for the save. We know that in Godzilla vs. Kong, Madison is an avid listener to Bernie Hayes' podcasts, and thanks to a few years on Skull Island in this timeline, Gia and Madison are good friends at this point, meaning when Gia vents her frustrations to Madison over the recent events, Madison is able to put the pieces together on what is going on. Well, puts together the pieces after stealing her dad's credentials and pulling up some confidential Monarch data. Did you really expect her to ask in this situation? Yeah, no. While she has Mark's heart, she is very much still the daughter of Emma Russell. So realizing what's going on, I can't see her staying to the sidelines when Kong makes his way to the surface. She'd likely petition to go to the Hollow Earth with Gia. Mark, currently assisting Monarch with Godzilla, knows he can't really tell her not to go. He knows his daughter, knows she'd go regardless of what he said, and knows that with Rahab in the Hollow Earth, she'd be more useful to Andrew's team in person than if she stayed on the surface. So despite his reservations, Mark gives Madison his blessing, proud of the young woman she's become. The story then proceeds as it did in the original timeline, just with Madison taking the spot on the team that Bernie held. Trapper flies the group into the Hollow Earth, and after a brief reunion between Madison and Rahab, the teams likely split apart. The human group searches for the source of the mysterious signal Gia is detecting, while Rahab and Kong, they venture into the subterranean realm. On that ominous note, I will have to say that using the attack on the Monarch Research Base as cover, Raymond slipped into the Hollow Earth along with his Titan Hunter mech. Now he hunts the Prince of the Primordial Abyss and the King of Skull Island, two targets very much distracted by their own search. Assuming Suko and his party of Kong still attack the Protector of Skull Island, they'd be in for quite a shock. Kong is more than a match for them, that's obvious, but what they'd likely be surprised by is Junior's presence. Blades and makeshift weapons would do little against the reptile's hide, and any threat to his Kong would bring out an aggression that Suko's party simply isn't prepared for. One Eye flees even faster than in the original timeline, luckily leaving Suko's fate in the hands of Kong. I can't see Junior liking or even wanting to tolerate this little troublemaker. Is it partly because he's jealous? Yes, but similar to what happened in Godzilla x Kong, Kong's desire to find others like himself ensures nothing bad happens to Suko despite Rahab's desires. Thus, Kong orders Suko to lead them to the rest of the tribe. And while the apes would slowly bond over the course of the journey, one consequence of Junior tagging along is that Suko's attempt to kill the pair would fail before it even started. I mean, upon reaching the lake, Junior would likely enter the water to cool off, running into the monstrous eel titan and dispatching it accordingly. Despite this impressive feat, however, Suko likely wouldn't be all that impressed. No matter how strong the pair may seem, there's still no match for what lay at the heart of the tribe's settlement. Speaking of serpents though, there is another change I need to mention, which is thanks to Junior's involvement in this timeline. That being how Godzilla's confrontation with Tiamat ultimately plays out. Because Junior had a hand in freeing Lahamu, if the young Titan is around, she'd likely investigate this new Titanus Gojira when he arrives at Tiamat's Arctic home. Now, Lahamu isn't joining her mom to fight Godzilla. Instead, her brief presence is enough to calm the Alpha's rage after a brief battle between the two Titans, ensuring Tiamat isn't turned into sashimi. Tiamat retreats with Lahamu, allowing Godzilla to enter the mighty serpent's lair and absorb solar radiation. And what little DNA he consumed during the battle, or what DNA already exists within the lair, is likely enough for the Alpha to evolve just like he did in the original timeline. As for the human cast storyline, Madison's more serious nature compared to Bernie's wouldn't fundamentally alter or change much. She'd likely be amazed at the ruins, comforting Gia, and taken completely by surprise, just like everyone else is, when the Hollow Earth Iwi capture them. If anything, when everyone else is in horror at learning the history of the Scar King, Madison likely would just find the whole storyline just absolutely neat. But enough of that diversion, let's check in on Kong and Junior. I'm sure everything is going fantastic for them.
How'd that plan turn out for you, dummy? You all about to have a real bad day. That'll cut you back down to size.
So, I might have lied. With the monsters nearing a cliff, I can see Raymond choosing this moment to ambush the group, with the monsters' backs literally against the ravine. Taken by surprise and thanks to the enhancements, the Titan Hunter mech likely can knock the wind out of the Titans in their first encounter. But the following retreat isn't out of pure desperation. Kong knows something Raymond doesn't, that there are others like him, well, like Kong, nearby. Whatever this mechanical thing is, it likely won't be well received when it walks into a tribe of Kongs. So the trio enter the lair of the Scar King, merely to find not a thriving civilization of Kongs, but a species subjected to a Crimson Despot's cruelty. The trio enter the camp, only to be met with the same hostile reception as in the original film. Now, you might expect Junior to be attacked on sight. He is a Godzilla after all. But excluding the Scar King, I can't see any Kongs being old enough to remember the war. At least, none of the workers, who likely perish the moment their aged bodies can't perform physical labor. So when the Scar King intervenes, he mocks Kong not for his metal tooth, but because of Junior, a 50 to 60 meter tall reptile compared to the icy behemoth under his own control. Only when the death of an elder Kong occurs does the Scar King feel the wrath of Kong. A fight ensues, and when Kong seems momentarily overwhelmed, Junior jumps into the fray. So when Shimo is free to level the playing field, turning the battle into a 2v2, the tide quickly turns. The Titan Hunter mech stole Kong's axe, so Kong has no way to counter Shimo's Frost Breath. Not that he'd ultimately know to try. That particular trick only revealed itself during his fight with Godzilla. A fight that never happened in this timeline. So Kong does what Kong does best. He charges in close, and Shimo makes him pay for it, leaving him far worse off than their encounter in the original film. Overwhelmed and seeing Suko's plan of escape, Kong barks in order to retreat, and Junior begrudgingly follows, not wanting to disappoint his current parental figure. After a brief hectic charge out of the lair, Kong stops running and hides amidst the soot and molten rock with Junior, allowing the Scar King's lackeys to run right past them. Why hide, you might be asking? Well, if you might recall, there is a certain mech hunting them. So when the lackeys run into Raymond, who is making his way into the lair, a battle breaks out. Kong and Junior then use the opportunity to silently sneak past the ongoing, conflict. But despite their efforts, despite Kong's stroke of brilliance, mechanical sensors alert Raymond to the pair's escape. They may have gotten past him for now, but their luck will not last forever. Kong, Suko, and Junior regroup at the Iwi Temple. When the human cast catches sight of Kong's injuries, they draw the obvious conclusion that the Scar King is responsible, unaware of the Titan Hunter. So Trapper acquires the Beast Glove, right? Actually, no. Remember, Kong never fought Godzilla or Mechagodzilla in the last part. He also never faced Godzilla in the Tasman Sea because he entered the Hollow Earth through the portal on Skull Island. There is no drive for Project Powerhouse because, well, to be honest, Kong hasn't proved himself as one of the strongest monsters on the planet. Therefore, the project never gets off the ground. Apologies for the interruption, but by far most of you are not subscribed. To stay up to date with the newest videos, please consider doing so. Thank you. At best, I can see some of the healing liquid being created in case Kong was ever seriously injured. Thus, Trapper acquires the liquid and gives Kong a bit of a second wind. So with Kong standing guard, Trapper, Rahab, and Madison venture to the surface to summon Godzilla. After all, if the Alpha is going to have a friendly reaction to anyone, it's more than likely going to be Junior than Kong. One Orca-administered Alpha call later, and Godzilla makes his way to Egypt. Though with human hindsight on the destructive beast they're courting toward a populated city, they'd likely lure the titular Alpha on a less destructive path toward the portal. Regardless, evolved Godzilla arrives and meets up with Godzilla Jr. And to everyone's surprise, when father and son meet, a fight flares to life. After all, this is the first time Junior has seen him since, well, their first encounter on the shores of China. And just to clarify, it's not Godzilla who throws the first punch, it's Rahab. Junior, though, isn't attempting to defeat his father, he is attacking him to be seen. For after years of abandonment and a great sense of inadequacy, Junior, by battling his father, is essentially making an introduction. An introduction which, all things considered, is quite poorly timed. With Suko scouting for the Hunter and the Scar King's forces, Kong's the only one left at the Iwi Temple when the Titan Hunter arrives. Covered in the blood of the Scar King's war party, it'd be quite clear to just about everyone what the mech's intentions are. So Kong, to protect Gia and the people behind him, enters a fierce close-quarter exchange. While the ape gives it his all, the Mechagodzilla upgrades and the lack of his axe handicaps Kong's abilities. Now Kong can smash and outsmart Raymond, but sheer power and an armored exterior ensures the Titan Hunter always has the upper hand. That is, until Mothra comes in for the save. Because while Kong defiantly struggled against the Titan Hunter, Gia did not sit idly by. She summoned Mothra, who, seeing the fight in the distance, does not hesitate to join the fray. And after a God Ray burst, I can imagine Raymond's will to fight wavering in this 2v1. Raymond retreats. Kong bellows a roar of victory before showing thanks to not only Mothra, but the young girl riding atop the Guardian. Kong once saved Gia's life, and now she saved his. Cutting back to Junior, he obviously doesn't stand a chance against evolved Godzilla, but winning was never the point. The point was to be seen, an outcome ultimately unresolved as Mothra intervenes. The battle can wait for another time. For now, they need to stop the Scar King. Though if I'm being honest, they'd likely have all the time in the world to prepare. Okay, perhaps not an infinite amount of time, but just like what happened in the first part, with Junior delaying the expedition, therefore causing a disastrous result for Mechagodzilla, here, Junior's interference with the story has delayed the Scar King's arrival by at least hours, perhaps days. That might sound insane, but you have to remember that because the Titan Hunter would most likely kill all of the scout parties sent after Kong after his battle with Shimo, there would be no one to tell the Scar King of the Hollow Earth portal next to the Iwi Temple, or even where Kong and Junior went. The only real motivating factor which could get the Scar King off his throne would likely be the tyrant's own impatience. But let's assume One Eye's uncanny cockroach-like survival skills are utilized here. The ape returns to the Scar King, informs him of the pair's escape plus the murderous mech, causing the tyrant to grow in rage. To soothe his pride, the Scar King gives chase with Shimo. Here though, the war party's size is remarkably smaller, as the Scar King doesn't know of a portal to the Hollow Earth. He's just after the Titan Hunter, Kong, Junior, and Suko. So following the trail of blood left in the machine's wake, the war party stumbles upon the Iwi Temple, merely to find Godzilla, Kong, Suko, Mothra, and Junior waiting for them. An all-out battle proceeds. The Iwi trigger their anti-gravity trap, launching the Titans and apes skyward before the field gives out, allowing gravity to yank the battle from within the Hollow Earth to the surface of the planet. And despite Junior joining the group, not to mention the Scar King's war party having far less apes at his disposal, this is far from a one-sided brawl. The Titan Hunter still has his royal axe. By the time Kong finds himself fighting within Rio de Janeiro, this would be his third major confrontation of the day. The ape would find himself pretty much spent partway into this battle. Thus, the Scar King can help Shimo against evolved Godzilla, or pummel the lights out of Suko and Junior. But when the special crystal at the end of his whip slash eventually breaks off, Junior recognizes the power the tiny shard holds, and does not hesitate to acquire such strength. So, what happened there? Well, put simply, we know Godzilla consumed a star to gain his unparalleled atomic power. Now, Shimo's crystals can't compare to that, but what it can do is jumpstart the young Saurian's own biological reactor. And what better source material is there to base this juvenile Godzilla's atomic power off of than Gemstone's spiritual successor to the Heisei era? With the Scar King evading Godzilla's atomic might, Junior unleashes his own energized fury. The same crystal that once bent Shimo to the tyrant's will now fuels the beam that reduces him to ash. Shimo yields to Godzilla, then descends with Kong and Suko back into the Hollow Earth. Because a lot of the warriors stayed behind, Kong would have a difficult dilemma ahead of him: what to do with those that were loyal to the Scar King. though I doubt Kong would have to worry about any rebellion with Shimo standing by his side. But what about Godzilla Jr., you might be asking? Well, going back in time to right after the battle, Godzilla would depart for the shoreline. Yet, when Godzilla moves to follow to restart the battle which cut short in Egypt, the Alpha of Earth offers no resistance. Godzilla does not push Junior away or reject the young Gojira. Instead, he acknowledges the reptile's existence and allows him to follow. Junior is now strong enough to safely be by his side, and if that is where Junior wants to be, Godzilla will not object. Junior glances back at Kong and Madison, who resides within the Heave, sharing a final look with his parental figure and friend, before the Saurian joins his father, vanishing into the depths of the ocean. So all's well that ends well, right? Well, not so much, because there is one more character I feel I need to mention. Raymond Martin surfaces with his Titan Hunter mech in need of repairs. With Shimo now at Kong's side and Junior at Godzilla's, his dreams of revenge will have to wait. See, Raymond needs more mechs and firepower to confront these powerhouses, so he's forced to reach out once more to Walter Simmons. However, the answer he receives is as infuriating as it is promising. Remember how I mentioned that Apex needed funding and they were willing to sell their secrets to other companies and countries? Well, after numerous offers, a certain country very much showed interest in creating anti-Titan mechs. So with an endless amount of Chinese yuan and experts flowing into Apex, the company can once again create a new Apex Titan. Now, it will take a few years, but eventually, Raymond will have an ally to fight alongside his Titan Hunter. That being... And it's on that note that I end part 2 of What If Godzilla Jr. Was in the Monsterverse, a series I'll likely not be returning to until well after Supernova's release. But in the meantime, there is plenty to be excited for. What If Batra Leo Existed in the Heisei era is next on the channel, set to release on July 17th. While on August 8th, you have the second part of the Gamera and Godzilla Showa crossover. But until then, I would be amiss if I didn't shout out the amazing Alpha Titan YouTube members that make videos like this possible for you to enjoy. They're also the ones that get to recommend their own scenarios, so if you would like to join this group, definitely check out the membership options down below. Regardless, these awesome people are Lorgan Dragon V, Thunder Student, Voltaire, Die Kaiju Fanboy, Windy Windu, Mighty Vulcan Productions, 23 Travs, Biggest Diggest Ahongus, and Galork. Anyway, thank you all for watching. As always, I'm GrayShot151, and I will see you all next time. Until then, later.